P. Dagastine was born August 1st, 1904 in a large apartment house on Little Italy Road, which is now known as Strawberry Avenue, across from the old Galliano farm. He was the third of 10 children born to Pasquale, but Pasquale was known as Jimmy Bighead, and Maria Mary Siciliano Dagastine. We've been told that there were 16 children born to the family, but only 10 survived. Lou had 5 brothers, Tony, Les, Sam, John, and Joe, and 4 sisters, Helen, who is Phil, Elizabeth, Liv, Frances, and Angelina, who is Lena. Anyone who knew Lou personally can remember Lou having a knack for being a great storyteller. And if he were here today, he would enjoy telling his life story to you. So I think it only appropriate to share in his words part of what Uncle Lou wrote to us in his memoirs of his family's history. Here's the story as it begins. After 4 children, Phil, Lou, Elizabeth, and Frances were born, the family moved to a home built on the family farm about a half-mile northwest of Parsons Lane, which is off of North Avenue. I can remember the day we moved. I was told in later years that I was only just a little over 2 years old and would be 3 the next August, but I remember very well the doings of the moving day. The day before we moved, my sister Elizabeth, who was 14 months younger than I, we were in the side yard playing when we were frightened by a large monster coming down the road. It was strange looking and made a funny noise. There were several people sitting and standing on it, and Elizabeth started screaming. Mother stuck her head out the window trying to comfort us as this huge monster went down the road by our house. It was, later learned, an automobile, the very first one that was ever in the area. Brothers Les, Sam, John, and Joe were born at the house on Parsons Lane. That would be our house until April of 1916. That is when the family moved to a larger home back on Little Italy Road, which became the Dagastine homestead. My sister Lena was later born at that house. I should note that at some point Lou changed the name of Little Italy Road to Strawberry Avenue. Back to the story. Now before we go any further, there is something I'm leaving out. That is how the name D'Agostino became the present name Dagastine. When I started to school, I was the only little Italian boy in the school. Well, little Italian boys at that time were not so popular. So as I went to school a year or so and learned to write, I started the changing of the name. I took out the apostrophe and changed the U to an A. Later I took off the O off the end and put in an E. Then later changed the O to an A, and that completed the change to Dagastine. In 1924, we built a can house across the street from the homestead. We canned tomatoes, string beans, and kefir pears. We shipped our first railroad carload of canned tomatoes in August 1925 to Alfred Lowry and Brother in Philadelphia. They were canned under the Montco label. In 1926, we got a telephone line run up to the homestead. So then we had telephone, but no electric yet. Then in 1928, after a lot of trouble, we had the electric company run an electric line up to the can house. In 1926, we opened up a movie house opposite the bank building. It was known as the New Joy Theater. We showed silent pictures from 1925 through 1929, and then sound pictures came. We then had what we called talkies. Then in 1932, the Depression came and things went bad. In 1933, the banks closed, most business houses went out of business. Dad passed away May 10th, 1935, and in 1936 we closed up the theater, and in 1937 closed the can house. In the meantime, during 1935, we started trucking with the old little Chevrolet truck that we had. We struggled hard for several years. I'm going to give you a side note. I can remember his brother Les telling us that when they would drive the truck out west to Chicago, the winters were so cold, they had no heated trucks, and they would take smudge pots and put them inside the cab to keep warm. His mother, Grandma, would make them onion sandwiches to eat. Les said that one time the truck broke down and they repaired it on the side of the street. The owner of a nearby business allowed them to sleep in the cellar of the building that night, and Lou and Les remembered seeing rats running around the room. That's what I call struggling to keep going. They were a resilient family. In 1939, we opened a coal yard in town where the new town hall is now by the railroad tracks. In 1947, we opened the Friendly Service Station and went from the coal yard to the heating oil business. In 1941, Lou worked in the company's front office and became president of Dagastine's Transfer. The trucking business continued to expand, hauling truckloads of seafood weekly to destinations as far west as Omaha, Nebraska. In the spring and summer months during the 50s and early 60s, local produce as well as salt hay was transported by the trucking firm. Trucks also hauled sand for a period of time, and after the oyster disease struck, clams became the main commodity to be trucked. Dagastine's Transfer, who was part of Lou's family, also owned a number of school buses which transported commercial township students to both the township elementary schools and to Millville High School. The trucking and bus companies were a large part of the community for over 50 years, employing many local residents. Lou was a devout member of St. Anthony's Roman Catholic Church and the Holy Name Society. He was also well known in the community as an active civic leader. I didn't know all this until I started reading back all the histories. In 1927, he started the Port Norris Social Club, which later became the Port Norris Civic Club. He was one of the club members instrumental in having a monument honoring veterans erected on Memorial Avenue. He was a charter member and past president of the Port Norris Rotary Club, which was founded in 1945. He was a member of the first local mosquito control board. And in 1968, he was appointed to the Cumberland County Housing Authority. Lou was one of the original members of the Commercial Township Planning Board since January of 1974, and he also served as a member of the local chapter of the March of Dimes. In his weekly news column, Jerry Alden recognized Lou as Mr. Port Norris. As active as Lou was, he found time for his favorite pastime, gardening. He enjoyed sharing the fruits of his labor with family, friends, and neighbors. He took pride in his garden and his yard. He had a loyalty to Buick automobiles, and he owned many during his lifetime. For many years, Lou and his wife Elizabeth enjoyed bowling, traveling both here and abroad to visit Elizabeth's family in Germany and his parents' homeland of Reggio di Sabri in the province of Calabria in southern Italy, which was very special for Lou. And throughout the years of his life, he traveled for the business, including the annual Oyster Convention, making many new lifelong friends along his way. Lou came from humble beginnings, and he never forgot his roots, showing tremendous pride for his Italian heritage. I can remember when the movie The Grandfather was released, Uncle Lou was very upset because he felt it did not represent the typical Italian-American family. A charitable person, he knew no strangers and was always willing to lend a helping hand, and he treated everyone with respect. He was loyal and dedicated to his family, friends, religion, and community. In fact, he continued to serve his community right up to the minute before his passing. He was found stricken in his car just after he left a planning board meeting, leaving this community 25 years ago in July of 1992. After his passing, the Port Norris Rotary Club established the Louis P. Dagastine Scholarship in his memory for his outstanding civic service and dedication to the well-being of the community in which he lived. Quoting from the scholarship, it stated, "Civic responsibilities are not done, nor do they provide monetary reward. However, helping neighbors and community can bring a great personal satisfaction and reward. What a tribute to a man who exemplified this virtue." Our family has had so many fond memories of Uncle Lou, both as a family member and as a working community member. One such memory is of him sitting in his office at his old-fashioned manual typewriter, hitting the keyboard with just 2 fingers, his pointers. To us, he was more like a grandfather than an uncle. We are so fortunate growing up to have experienced the rare opportunity of seeing our uncle on a daily basis for so many years. He has inspired in each of us the desire to continue in his footsteps, to follow by example, loving both his family and his fellow man. A true gentleman, he would be so humbly proud to be honored as a Port Norris legend today. Thank you.